All right. I always say I'm really excited to talk to my next guest, and I always am, but I really am excited to talk to my next guest on the Sports Car Chat guest line. I got to meet him this past year in Cleveland at the National and the events there and the Moynihan get together. Probably, I'm going to say what to me one of the nicest guys in the hobby. He's nicer than me. I'll give him that much. But one of the nicest guys in the hobby. He's got a great collection on top of that. But glad to finally have him on. Tony Demarzio, welcome finally to Sports Card Nation.
Hey, John, thank you for having me. I feel like I
Yeah,
made
no,
it. Dad, I
yeah.
made it.
Well, let's not get too crazy. Uh, but no, glad to have you. And like I said, I've gotten to know you through the meeting you in person and subsequent conversations online, on the phone, and what have you. And, like the tagline of the show, right? The hobby is the people. And hopefully, those people that you sort of affiliate yourself with are good or great. And you check those boxes. I use the two A words, ambassador and advocate. You check those boxes. So glad to have you on. First time on. I know it's not always an exciting question, but we got to start there. It's kind of how did the hobby all start? How did this crazy hobby get started for you?
For me, got started back in 1984. Was able to find some packs of 84 tops. Came across a couple packs of 84 Don Russ, and then started buying Beckett magazines, and the rest is history.
Yeah, and we had a conversation, not recording, about some of those '80s designs, and some of those early Donruss designs were pretty bad to put it bluntly. But that '84 Donruss, I know in speaking to you about it, we both love it. I think it's
Yep.
one of the, even to this day, 40 something years later, 41 years later, it really stands the test of time, and not a lot of those designs from the '80s do. And the '84 Donruss, like to me, we don't really know who designed these early Donruss sets, but I got it without knowing for sure. I could be wrong here, Tony. It's like the 81 and the 82 guy or person. They're like, hey, good try, we're getting someone else in here. And whoever did the 84 like hit it out of the park. And the 85 is still one of my other favorites, and that was the
Mhm.
obviously subsequent year. So like those 2 years for Donruss, were to me were home runs between the design, obviously the rookie class, and that sort of thing, and still to this day, I love it, and you can't say that about stuff that's always 40 years old, especially people would call like the junk wax era, if
Mhm.
you will, a little bit before, I like to think, but getting close. Kind of your thoughts on piggybacking off what I just said there.
84 Don Russ and 84 Flair Update are my two favorite sets of from the 1980s, and also growing up. They hold a special place in my heart. I was able to get a my childhood Mattingly rookie, and that was one of the first 10 cards I ever got graded. And I got, according to my PSA sub, I was able to get into my account. That was 2004. Was the first time I ever got cards graded.
Yeah.
So
Now you like '84 Fleer design a little bit better than I do. I know we talked about that again,
well, I like the
but
Don Russ better, but the
yeah,
84 Flair
yeah,
update with Clemens, Gooden,
yeah,
Seaver, and that rookie class, it's just
yeah,
unbelievable.
and
Rose
and
wearing the Expos
yeah,
uniform.
yeah. That set brings back good memories and bad memories for me, Tony.
Hmm.
I owned a set. It was sort of in my PC, and during my store years in the '90s, I don't know why, but I brought the set to the store, even though I wasn't selling it, and it was kind of in the back room. And I had a partner in the store, but we also had another guy that kind of helped us out and worked for us, and it wound up he stole all the key cards out of that set. and went and sold it to another store in a nearby town. And it's a long story, but I never saw those cards again. So
Sorry about that.
it is, it makes for good content kind of to talk about, but not a fun moment at the time. But yeah, that set is just iconic for the and what could have been too. I mean, when you think of Gooden and Strawberry
Hmm.
and so um, but the '84 Donruss, I'm 12 years old at the time, born in '72, and I was broke because of '84 Donruss. And anyone that's heard my stuff knows I got a big a thing for rookie cards with close
Hmm.
facial shots like the Mattingly '89 Upper Deck Griffey, and so that '84 Donruss basically bleeded my wallet dry consistently. So, but that just goes to show you how much I love the design and the cards that were in it. And to me, it stands the test of time. Unlike many things from the '80s in the hobby, that one still checks all the boxes for
All the
me.
boxes, every
Yeah,
box it
and
checks.
yeah, and it's just an iconic set. And I even have a few packs I put away that sometimes I'm tempted to. What's in it? Could there be? I mean, I remember in '84 I was on a really bad streak of opening '84 Donruss and not hitting the manly. I was actually getting, 12-year-old kid mad but you know. So I remember that, and that's probably why I don't open them up. You've got quite the collection. Like me, you like vintage.
Hmm.
I think from a selfish, my opinion. I think that's where it's at. I think today's as a dealer I carry new stuff, but they just it's all a blur. There's so many, we talk about artificial scarcity and I don't know about you. I like the days when a guy had one rookie card or maybe three at the most, and now a rookie coming out is going to have 1,000 different rookie cards. Talk about kind of your approach to what you collect, what moves your meter.
Hmm. Just to talk about the different rookie cards and everything. At the Philly show, my son picked up two cards. One is a 2018 Panini Contenders Saquon Barkley, and he liked this card. Obviously, he's wearing a Giants, and we're from Philadelphia. But it's shaped like a ticket stub. So the top is perforated like a ticket stub would be, well, before tickets went on the iPhone and other phones. And he picked up a Jalen Hurts 2020 National Treasures rookie card, and it has a solid black pouch, not from any game. It's not game worn or event worn, but it's just one of like 50 or to 100 rookie cards each of these players had in their respected years. But I guess with my son's going to be 16, and to him, I guess he likes to have the variety of buying a rookie card that either has an autograph on card or a sticker or a prism or shiny or multiple different options. So I guess Panini and Topps, they check all the boxes for these younger kids across the price points,
Yeah,
but
no,
not my thing.
and
So.
yeah, no doubt. Listen, what kid? I mean, even me. I don't want to just say kid, right? To even
Mhm.
when I open new stuff, right? The sort of the adrenaline rush of pulling an auto or a game use card. And then when you got a game use card, is it going to be single colored? Is it going to be part of the patch? Are you going to recognize what part of the uniform it's from? That sort of thing. Our era, Tony, we didn't have those back then. Like this is it's not new now, but it's a new concept when we compare to kind of what we grow up in, and we're all a product of our environments. If for some reason we had that back then, we would have loved it back then. So I get it, and we can go down the road of like not game used, not any specific game. That's a whole show in itself. But there are game used jersey cards where they are guaranteed to be used in the game, and then some products are even hologrammed, and they tell you what game it actually came from, which I think is
Hmm.
always cool. I don't have it any longer, but I remember even a Conforto patch card I had, which had part of the Mr. Met on it, which was really cool. And it had that hologram which you scan. It tells you the game that he
Yeah.
wore that in. And it happened to be a game he went like 4 for 5 with 2 home runs. And I watched it, I went on YouTube and they had the whole game uploaded on YouTube. So I literally watched the game and I'm watching the patch in action that's was sitting in my office while I was watching the game, which is kind of a weird, cool moment to think. But and that's always cool that you have those ties. And when Conforto left the Mets, someone wanted it still, and I wound up selling it. But kind of a cool card, cool conversation piece. But you're a vintage guy like me
Hmm.
especially when it comes to the PC. How would you describe kind of what you PC? Obviously, Philly. You're a Philly native and you love your Philly teams.
Mike
So it
Schmidt,
probably
Steve Carlton.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it probably starts there. That's kind of the low. But what when you're looking to add something to the PC, what kind of moves your meter? What are you looking at?
Hmm. So I got out of the hobby as for short, as a sabbatical, as what we call it, in late 2000, in late 1992. And then I came back in 2018 and then stayed in for 18 months. And the first thing I did was I went on eBay. I learned about PSA. And I said, oh, okay, because I got cards graded in 2004. So I knew what PSA was. But I went on eBay and eBay had some tremendous coupons where you get 15% off. And I ended up buying the PSA 7 and 8 runs of every single Schmidt card from 73 up, and I usually concentrated on OPG. And then I picked up the Carlton cards too. And in 2018, they were pretty inexpensive compared to what they are now, even in PSA 8 grade. And so that did it for me. I picked up a couple of Reggie Jacksons also because I was a Reggie fan growing up after Schmidt and Carlton. And then I kind of drifted away, and then I came back in late 2022. And then I'm thinking to myself, okay, I've been out of the hobby, give or take, for 35 years. So I tried to think, what did 10-year-old, because I was born in 1976. So what did 10-year-old Anthony, is what they called me then, what did he like? Well, I liked modern cars, but I always had a fascination with the greats. Who were the greats to me? Mickey Mantle, DiMaggio, Mays, Robin Roberts. McCovey and those types of guys. And I'm like, okay, so I always wanted them as a child, wasn't able to afford them, so let me go get them. So I was able to, wait till the market kind of settled down a little bit, and we had a couple dips in 2023, and I picked up a lot of those rookie cards and the Aaron Johnston cookies and the Aaron tops, 54 tops, and it was a lot of fun. And then once I got all those cards I always wanted during this 35 years of being AWOL from the hobby, I decided, well, this Joe DiMaggio is great, but I never had a Babe Ruth card. I never had a Lou Gehrig card or Jimmy Fox, Christy Mathewson. So then I started going down the pre-war rabbit hole, and that's when it's just you know everything changes because not only you just don't have the one base card per year with maybe a league leader card associated with that or a tops test issue, but you have other types of cards. You have manufacturers, you got caramel card manufacturers that were candy makers, tobacco make, the tobacco cards and so on. So I got into that a little bit and then the autographs, but mainly vintage, pre-war, and some of the stuff from the 50s and 60s. Then I got into the oddball. stuff, what people call oddballs. So like the Johnston cookies, the 68 Topps 3D, the Venezuelan cards, OP cheese, just trying different things and seeing you know, what attracted me to various aspects of the hobby. And the cards are great, but what I found out was a lot of the hunts I had and a lot of the items in my collection, they would never be with me if it wasn't for relationships I made in the hobby, good friends. And that's clutch, because you're talking to a lot of these folks online and then at the national or these regional card shows, you're able to get to talk to people, then you meet them. And then before you know it, you're talking to folks about maybe 25% of the hobby, and then the other 75% is more about what's going on in life outside of the hobby, sports and families. And you I mean, I just met someone in the hobby 6 months ago, and it turns out that person works at the same company I do. I had no idea.
Wow, talk about small
Yeah,
world.
it is a small
Yeah.
world. So just it's just like you said, the hobby is the people. And pieces of cardboard, they're great, but without the story and the people behind them, you know, then they're just pictures of grown men.
Yep, yep. Well said. And talk about, like you said, you kind of sabbatical for a number of years, and then to come back after all that time. Was it easier than you were expecting? More difficult than you were expecting? And kind of talk about, like, not being in the hobby and then kind of coming back. Now you were, it was a different hobby than the one you were familiar with. While some things were similar, and obviously was much different. The terrain was much different. Talk about kind of coming back after all that time, like how you did it, maybe any
hmm
kind of difficulties you ran into, and how you navigated all that.
So with the modern stuff, and I'm always concerned about modern because of my children. My daughter, who's 12, collects Formula One. My son started collecting cards in 2015 with the Star Wars and soccer cards and NFL football. Um, so the reason I got out of the hobby in 1992 is because I bought a Shaquille O'Neal Topps Stadium Club card, and dealer won it $25. I was able to get the card for about $20, and I was all happy. I got Shaq's key rookie, and he's the hottest thing now. You had MJ, then you had Robinson, and now you got Shaq, and I got Shaq. I was all happy. Friends were proud, saved up money, and then a month or two later, the latest Beckett magazine hit the newsstand, picked it up, and I found out there's a Beam Team card. And not only is there a Beam Team card, but there's a members only Beam Team card. Now, my card is going down in value, whereas these inserts are going up. So the inserts drove me away from the hobby, just left a bad taste in my mouth. So now it's 2018. I'm only buying vintage, really. But my kids want to buy modern stuff. So the hardest part for me is learning to accept that with the modern cards, you're going to have these inserts, you're going to have these parallels, these variants, and you got to learn about them because you don't want your kids to get a little, you don't want the kids to get taken advantage of or getting bummed because they just spent $100 on a blaster pack, and then they get nothing out of it. So that was the biggest adjustment in terms of that. Now, with regards to the vintage items that I always wanted as a child and I got into, not too much has changed other than the prices, obviously. I mean, the first vintage card I remember picking up was in 1987. My grandparents and my dad saved some money, and I was able to go to Berlin Farmers Market. It's outside of Philadelphia in New Jersey, and I picked up a 67 Topps Mickey Mantle, and one of my
There
favorite
you go.
cards because when you look at the Mick, he was nearing the end of his career. His
Yep.
production obviously wasn't what everyone was used to, but it was a nice profile picture. And I remember I was listening to one of the first YouTubers I watched at that time, John Keating, and John's talking about this card, and he's referring it to the Uncle Mick card because he looks like he had a few Mickey's beers
Yeah.
um, in that card. So Vintage, the biggest adjustment was not only the increase in prices, but also the amount of people going after it. But luckily, you got enough supply for that demand. And, unless you're looking for a pristine 50, 50, 55, 45 centering. That was, and then the grading that was part of it, obviously, because the grading influences how much it costs. So it wasn't so 2022, 2023 for me wasn't like it was in 2018, where I was able to pick up these PSA sevens, these SGC sevens and eight, which were pretty cheap. Nah, things went up quick. So I just had to learn to pivot, and I sold some things that were, that I collected when I was outside of the hobby to help fund my current hobby. So that really helped me out in terms of, taking the ding out of my wallet. It padded it a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt. And yeah, the pricing can be crazy. I'm not going to read, but I've told my Jackie Robin's store, rookie store, I could have bought it many times much cheaper than I eventually had to purchase it. But don't regret it. It's right behind me, over my shoulder here. And that's the fun, right? Is to acquire something we've always wanted to, even if it's later than we wanted to get it. You know, you grew up in the '80s. Collecting. We kind of talked about that already, where we had, it wasn't just Tops anymore. We had Donruss on the scene, Fleer, Score eventually came along in '88, Upper Deck in '89, and so on and so forth. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of enjoyed those days. I know it's, as it's referred to, the junk wax era, and much of that is in common boxes or landfills. But one thing I do miss for sure is, a number of manufacturers competing in the arena to try to best each other and make the best product. And now with the exclusiveness of Fanatics and the licensing, the way it's been now for a number of years, not new. Um, I kind of miss the days, even though I don't open as much new stuff as I once did. I still do as a dealer who wants to put some cards out in the showcase and have some of that selection. And again, it's a pipe dream. I don't know if we'll ever see those days again, and if we will, it won't be in the next few years. It'll be some time. But I hope someday we can have multiple manufacturers making baseball cards, basketball, football, hockey, insert whatever sport you love. Because I think, especially nowadays, I think even more so, I think that will drive the best out of each of those companies. And I know you don't, you mentioned because you care, because your kids are right in that wheelhouse for age, even just for them. Like, thinking about what I just said. I mean, do you kind of miss those days, or not necessarily? It doesn't
I
necessarily
do.
bother you.
I do because even though Flair in the 1980s, they were headquartered out of Philadelphia. I couldn't find Flair. Flair 85, I found a little bit. 86, I couldn't find Flair anywhere. 87, same thing, and I don't know what the reason was. It just couldn't find them. Don Russ, by 86, Don Russ was nowhere to be found. So I was forced to buy Tops. So me buying Tops in pretty much most of 85 and 86 and 87 was kind of like Tops had a monopoly in my market in terms of availability. So I guess that would be familiar with how it was before 1981 buying cards. You were forced to buy Tops. Yeah, there was a few other sets there, TCMA and that's what's the set
Gla-
SSCP or
Yeah, then you had the Galasso.
yeah, Galasso.
Yep,
And so
yep.
there was no competition, and I feel like that's where we're at now. We're not heading there. We actually are there. At the Philly show, my daughter was looking for Formula One blaster box to buy, and Fanatics makes them. I mean, there's no other making it. So the innovation's not there when you don't have competition. So they have a monopoly, and unfortunately, nothing I could say or do can, it is what it is, and we just got to hope that Fanatics and owns Tops, they keep innovating and eventually, the Major League Baseball and the NFL Players Associations and the leagues, they come to some conclusions where they're willing to deal with multiple card manufacturers again instead of just the exclusive contract for one of them. But until then, we're at their mercy.
Yeah, unfortunately. Yep, yep. You mentioned here you're in Fleer's backyard. I'm a Brooklyn kid, so I'm in Topps
Hmm.
backyard. No shortage of Tops. What I'm curious to your theory. Like you had the opposite problem I had. Tops
Yeah,
was everywhere in New York City, being a New York City company. Here you are in the home of the birthplace of Fleer, basically. Yet you had trouble finding it. Do you have any theories to why? Where you think they were just shipping it to other locations and not so much worried about local sales, or what do you think?
I think it was people flipping them. I think collectors, because in '85, at least in my area, that's when I noticed adults going into stores and buying packs and buying boxes. I just think that the mom and pop stores, which sold boxes, because at that time distributors were actually corner stores. So corner stores could be mom and pop stores, like a 7-Eleven size store, but it would be owned by a family. And you also had candy wholesalers, distributors, and they would sell cards alongside with a case of nail laters, um, and M&Ms. And I think just people were buying them and they were holding on to them because they thought that this is their retirement, 20 years down the road, 30 years down the road. And since Topps was plentiful and the price guides always had Flair and Don Russ, at least from '84 on, to be they were more valuable, at least in the price guides. I think that's the reason why I couldn't find Flair, because they were the hottest thing along with Don Russ. Sportflix was available. Not too many people were buying them in '86 and '87 in my area, even though I liked them. But I think that's the reason why. I just think that the flippers got to them.
Yeah, I could see that. It makes sense, and to potentially why. And you mentioned Sport Flicks, and that was something completely different that we really haven't seen prior. Now we've seen lenticular cards, right? We think
Hmm.
about those Kellogg's 3D sets from the early '70s and '80s, but they didn't move; they just looked 3D. But the sport, I like the Sport Flicks, but like you said, that was sort of you either loved them or you hated them. There was really no in betweens, and I think the haters outnumbered us, Tony, on the sport flicks. But I kind of liked them. I mean, the worst thing about them was that because of the size and thickness of the cards, you only got like three in a
Three,
pack instead of
three in a pack,
yeah,
and they were like $1 a pack.
yeah,
If I remember,
instead of
they were the first $1 a pack.
yeah, and instead of your 10 to 12 or more, of your regular stock cards. So that was the down. I think that's what people disliked more, Tony, about the sport flicks was just the amount of cards you pulled out of a
Yeah,
pack rather than
I
the
think so
cards
too.
themselves. Because
Yeah,
like
because
come
they
on,
were cool.
the guy swinging the bat or putting the glove down in the field. That's pretty cool to see. It's like a little movie in your hand, like
Hmm.
in a sense, a 1 or 2 second clip that you couldn't get on any other kind of cardboard. And I always got a kick out of them, but I think between the cost and the amount of the limited cards you were getting per
Hmm.
pack, I think that sort of killed sort of the buzz. Where me and you still kind of appreciated them, and it's funny. I still have them. In this room in different spots, and I even think there's some wax over there that's still sealed. And so here's the
Yeah.
nice thing: if you ever open any sport flicks, all these years later, they don't stick together like some of these other regular cardboard cards. So you
I
avoid that.
Last
Go
year
ahead.
at the Philly show, I went to Brian Roth's table, and
Yeah.
he had bought 3 boxes of '86 Flair, because now I'm making up for my childhood. So as like 10-year-old me now, so I'm satisfying 10-year-old Tony. I bought 3 boxes of '86 Flair, and I bought a box of '86 Sportflex. And I opened up one of the boxes of Flair. I'll save the other one for the National, and I kept the Sportflix box closed. but I really want to open it up because it's cool stuff. And I only opened up 1 or 2 packs in '86 of that brand because it was just too expensive, $1 a pack for a 10
Yeah.
year old. Couldn't afford it.
And now you can buy Transcendent for $30,000 a box. If you were complaining about dollar sport flicks packs, and now we're in the era where you could buy a box for 30K. You know, one third or one fourth of my house is a box of cards. Like that's crazy to think about. But it's a different time, and $1 a pack. You hit that 3-digit mark. That was a big deal back then. So,
For my
but
40th
it's
birthday.
yeah. Go
Oh,
ahead. Go
sorry.
ahead.
I was going to say, just talking about expensive boxes for my 49th birthday, February 9th. It was on the same day as the Super Bowl. My son got me a pack of absolute 2024 football. And I don't know how much it cost him. I would guess at least 75 to $80 easily. And I think we got $20 worth of cards max. And
Yeah, that's how that sometimes works.
but we had fun
Well, listen,
opening up
hey,
that though.
listen, your Eagles delivered on your
Yeah.
birthday though with a
Yes, they did.
Lombardi. So
Hmm.
while the box may not have been fruitful, the game more than probably made
Hmm.
up for it, and so way to celebrate your birthday. My birthday's in November, and the way the Steelers are going, I'm just hoping I live long enough to see another Super Bowl. I don't care that it won't be on my birthday. I just hope I'm still around to enjoy one more time at least. But that's a show for another day. You mentioned grading, and like you said, you,
Hmm.
you graded your first card in 2004. I remember I had my store. I had a store from '92 to '97, and I remember when that was really when I first took notice of grading. And one of my customers came in. I remember what card it was. Tony, it was a '92 Bowman Mariano Rivera rookie. He was a Yankee fan. Everyone that knows the card, it's Mariano in a polo shirt and khakis. Kind of a cool concept that we didn't. That was something new as
Hmm.
well with the Bowman. A lot of rookie centric product, and he had it graded by Beckett Grading Services. And he brought it in. He's like, John, I got my Rivera rookie graded. And, he handed it to me. And I was anti-grading to people. I've told the story on my podcast before, but I was kind of like, oh, that's a money grab. His name was Rob. I'm like, Rob, you could have just brought it in here. I would have told you like what condition it was in. You just threw away $20 or whatever it cost, and then it's in the slab now. You can't hold the card in the sense the same way as you once did, and obviously I've done a 180 now and being a bulk subber for SEC, but even that happened way before the bulk, and we see a lot of with fakes and forgeries and trimming and altering, and obviously grading, whether you like it or not, or whether you do it or not. I think everyone can say there is a purpose served. If even if you take the numerical grade out of it, just the fact that someone is authenticating it and saying, yeah, this is real, untrimmed, not altered type of deal, and without even talking about number grade. So obviously I grade, I set my own cards for grading. I do the bulk subbing, as I said. So I've changed, and that's the beauty of the hobby, right? Is we can have one opinion and then change our minds at some point for whatever reason. We don't even owe an explanation. I like to give one when possible. But grading still has, to the people who don't like it, they have plenty of ammunition for in their guns to say why they don't like it. Sometimes when they miss something, or you see something graded a 10 in the slab, and to the naked eye you see an imperfection, a ding corner, and you're like, how did I get a 10? You know, they've graded stuff that turned out not to be authentic. So there's little pratfalls here and there, and that's any industry.
Hmm.
kind of your thought as someone who's graded quite a bit, like myself. It doesn't deter me from grading, but whenever something like that happens, I always sort of cringe because I know the people who don't like grading, it's just another notch on their belt to say, hey, this is why we don't grade, and this is why grading's terrible, and that sort of thing. But kind of your own experiences as someone who buys graded cards, who submits graded cards, kind of where we're at currently.
Like you said, I think grading definitely serves a purpose in this hobby. Um, Definitely helps if something should happen to you. It helps your loved ones sell the collection more for a set amount because you can use applications like Card Ladder, BCP, and you can look at a grade of a card. Okay, this is a 6 or 6.5. That can easily be looked up and cross-referenced against previous sales. So it does help in that aspect. It also helps with insurance purposes and any kind of valuation. And then if two friends are trading, or if you're selling something to a dealer or buying from a dealer or trading, it just puts a value next to something. It's like a price guide. It helps work like a price guide, I should say. But it is a frustrating experience for many, and I understand why. It just seems that today the graders are a little bit strict, and I understand why. I'm all for it. And I just think that now PSA and SGC is making up for being maybe a little bit loose 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago when a few cards were more than a few cards were overgraded, or maybe some trim cards slipped through. But I think we're paying the price for it now. For example, if you look at the recent issue of the PSA magazine, there's a set that's profiled in there. I think it's called the Look and See set, or where they have famous people in there. And there's a card in that magazine that was recently graded that's a PSA 9. Well, this card was graded recently, and a month before that card was graded, that same card was a PSA 5. I know the person who submitted the card. It was a 5, and the person knew it wasn't a 5. They just cracked it, resent it, and it came back a 9. So how do you go from a 5 to a 9? So what I'm observing myself is I think that a lot of pressure are on these grading companies, especially the ones that have these card guarantees, to try to get things right. And maybe sometimes in order to get things right a little bit too much, they might have to sometimes overanalyze things, and maybe they miss something or they think they see something, and things happen. And I don't, everyone's human, and people make errors, but I think that the current SGC and PSA team, I like them so much better than the previous regime. And I think they're dealing with a lot of cleaning up messes from the previous, management of those companies. So I think they're doing their best, but it's a frustrating experience because I have a 38 Gaudi heads up Dimaggio without the characters, without the cartoons, and it's an SGC too, and I love it. And due to the case I was using, it put a little bit pressure on the top of the slab, and it started to crack. So I had a PSA sub that I needed to do. So I'm like, well, instead of just sending it into SGC, let me send it in the PSA and see if it crosses over. And I put a mint grade of 2 because there's an SGC 2, and I compared the aesthetics of the card condition to what PSA defines as a card that's in good condition. It allows wrinkles, it allows rounded corners. Um, and PSA kicked it back to me. They didn't even grade it because it didn't, they would have did a 1.5 or a 1. And I look at the grader notes, and it says round the corners. Okay, PSA 2 allows round the corners, and and they also put wrinkles, not creases, but the word wrinkles. And if you look up the definition of a PSA 2 or good condition, they allow creases, not wrinkles, but they allow creases. So
Yep.
just stuff like that. It's
Yep.
just a little frustrating, but I'm not picking on the graders because I met Nat last year at the National. My son and I, we finished first in a PSA set registry, the only one that we have, which was the Lionel Messi World Cup base set, 5 card set. We got invited to the PSA awards dinner. PSA did a wonderful job with that. My son and I met Dominique Wilkins. We got his autograph. The food was good. And I also met other folks in the hobby, like Victor, the rookie card fella, and
Yep.
uh, and I met other folks and folks who collected modern, vintage, and it was a great time. So they're definitely trying their best. They're trying to do what's good for the hobby, but I just think that sometimes maybe take a step back and just see what you're trying to accomplish. If it's a little too hard on the consumer, that's all.
Yeah, and remember, it's subjective, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's, my eyes are going to be different than your eyes,
Hmm.
and the other guys are going to be different than both of our eyes. And while they might have guidelines, how accurately a grader follows them, again,
Yeah.
subjective. That shouldn't be as subjective as just the looking at the card itself. But sometimes I think it is. Someone might say a wrinkle in the crease. A wrinkle in the crease is the same thing. Where we'll
Hmm.
say it's not. Like you may think it is, but when it comes down to brass tacks, they're actually two different things. And
Hmm.
I had a not a debate, but someone asked me, at my table at a show, like, John, what's the difference between a wrinkle and crease? Like, to me, I always thought they're the same thing. And my explanation is a wrinkle is kind of on the front or surface or back, and it doesn't go all the way through
Hmm.
to the other side. If it's creased, it's parallel on both sides, and it's like your card got bet at that point, and it shows in the exact spot on both sides. And after explaining that, they're like, yeah, that makes sense. So people may just assume like a wrinkle in a crease is the same thing. It might be if you're making your bed, but on cardboard, it's not exactly the same. So that's a great point by you with the definition of the two grade, right? And
What you were
both
just
sides.
telling me about the wrinkles, I don't think the grader's married because whoever graded this DiMaggio cards probably not married because if that person asked their wife what's the difference between a wrinkle or a crease in her skin, I think they would know the difference.
Yeah, yeah. So be careful of those single card graders. You might just be knocked down a notch. But it's subjective. Like you said, you
Yeah,
got the human element. I think most people understand that. I don't want to spend a lot of time with this
yeah,
question, Tony, but being we both have experience on the grading side, it's a question I get sometimes asked. I ask other people as well. We hear a lot about AI, and AI is already in grading. This is not new. Um, but there's people that want to see the card itself not graded by a person, but literally graded by a computer system that's aided by AI and not by human hands. I don't mind that if there's still a human that has to sign off on the grade, but I just
mhm,
don't want the computer to get my card, spit out a grade, and it go in a box and be shipped back to me. We know computers glitch. We know computers make mistakes. We know there can be viruses and overrides,
mhm,
and I don't even know half the stuff. I don't so much have a problem with the grade by the computer, but I also want that human kind of to sign off on it, almost like that Inspector 12. Like the computers give it a 9. I looked at it and I concur with the 9. Or I looked at it and I think it's an 8. We're going to run it through again and see what it says. Or if there's more than one AI system, we're going to run it through a different one and see what that comes up with.
mhm,
But I don't want it just to be exclusively AI only. And there's two reasons for that. Kind of what I just said is computers can make mistakes just like humans do. So if you want to use the combination to try to get the best accurate grade, but I'm a human being, right? And we've seen people lose jobs due to innovation and technology. And I get it; it's part of the future and how we go. But I don't want to see 50 graders walking out the front door on their last day of work necessarily. There's that human aspect. Hey, someone has to go home and tell their significant other, like, today was my last day at work. The AI 5200 is where I used to stand and sit and look at stuff. It's replacing me. As
Mhm.
an aid, sure, but I mean, as a complete taking the human element out of it, I don't want to see that. Some will argue. I just think, I just wanted to kind of get your kind of thoughts on. And again, we AI exists now. Whenever you send your cards in for grading, whether you're a bulk subber or you're sending 10 cards on your own, they go into the AI scanner they identify the card, if it's
Mhm.
any kind of parallel, a special insert, and then that labels the flip. So AI is in effect for most grading companies as we speak. I'm talking more along the lines like I just mentioned, where it
Mhm.
actually starts, like a tag uses it to kind of give a numerical grade. Kind of your thoughts on strictly that and not a human element.
I think everything you said, I would agree with. Try AI, run it through, and just have a person visually inspect it to see if it's valid or not. Because at the end of the day, it's people programming that software, and then and also the software that runs on the hardware in order for that to work. So I'm in agreement.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you because I think we kind of concur. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think I don't when I get my cards back from grading, I do appreciate the fact that someone looked at that, with magnification in their hands, and maybe multiple people. Maybe he or she said, "Hey, I see this as a nine. What say you? Am I right, wrong? Depending on the card too, right? So, um, I don't have a problem with that, but I just, I'd be more nervous having just one computer look at it, and then
Hmm.
you're at the mercy, of that. Uh, we talked. You're in Philly. We talked about the shows, and it
Hmm.
seems Philly's always had shows, but it really some great shows are coming out of that area. It's a great city, right? My nephew's a firefighter there now, lieutenant, and you got your sports teams. The Eagles look like perennial, either Super Bowl champions or at least contenders
Hmm.
every year. The Flyers are on their way back, and the Phillies are always, as a Met fan, I know this firsthand, are always uh, usually a leading contender to win the NL East and then vie, to advance in the playoffs and get a World Series. So it's a great sports town with some successful teams. Obviously, a great rich history. But I mean, what do you? But other than the obvious stuff that what do you attribute like to the explosion of some new shows, some existing shows that have gotten even better? As someone who lives there and attends these, obviously more than me, how do you attribute what's going on in the Philly area?
So the first show I ever attended was the '88 National, which was in Atlantic City. Then in 1989, my father took me to the January. It was in January. It was a 500 home run show where all the living 11 members at that time of the 500 home run club were there. So those were my first two exposures to big shows, other than what we had in local shows and Best Westerns or at the basement of churches where I actually bought my first pack of Upper Deck 1989 Upper Deck. But went to a show in like 2002 or three at the Philadelphia Convention Center, and that's where I sold a couple of the cards. Even though I wasn't in the hobby, I wanted to get the money, and I used it for other stuff. So I sold the cards to Mr. Mint, and I had to do
Yeah.
my homework before approaching Mr. Mint. But I saw his stack of hundreds, so yeah, he definitely didn't take any mercy on me, but he taught me a valuable lesson to make sure I do my homework before selling cards. But but the Philly show to me at the after COVID, I went to the Philly show in March of 2022, and then I went in 2023, and just with the amount of athletes that they're getting there, and not only the amount of athletes, but but the quality of the athletes. I mean, you got Schmidt, Carlton, Reggie Jackson was supposed to be at the one two times ago, but he wasn't able to make it. And you got the Eagles, you got football players, you got hockey players. I mean, basketball
Yeah, you just
players,
had a show where like
everybody.
almost the whole Super Bowl team
Yeah,
show. You never see that other than unless they're going to the White House, which at this
yeah,
point a lot of teams are declining. But
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
rarely see that kind of attendance at one show.
It was packed.
But
It was
yeah,
packed where on Friday night, my son was able to get done crew practice early, and we got Jalen Hurts' autograph. He signed a souvenir NFL Super Bowl ticket that they were giving out, and he was the nicest guy, humble. He thanked us for signing, and yeah, and then everyone was there except for Saquon Barkley, pretty much just probably because of contract or maybe, something, or maybe he was just out of town on that week. But
yeah, prior
everybody was
commitment
there.
matters.
Yeah, and even Foles. Foles was there for his second out of the last three Philly shows. Was there, and that was nice because then you had the two Super Bowl MVPs from the Eagles teams there. So he was there Saturday,
Yeah,
and that was really cool. But I got Foles' autograph on Friday, and on Saturday, my daughter and I got Schmidt's autograph on two cards, and we got Jake Elliott's autograph. He's the Eagles kicker. So that
yeah.
was fun. But everybody, it was just a lot of fun. And then I know a couple of baseball stars, Hall of Famers, they were kicked until the next show. So they'll be back in the fall because I guess the Eagles, wasn't like a last minute thing where they were able to get them all there.
It was the Eagles takeover, so
Yeah.
and rightfully so. You just won a Lombardi Trophy. That's a huge
Hmm.
deal. So
Yep.
you made a big couple acquisitions and moved some of your existing inventory. If you want to share that, I you showed me, but for those
Yeah.
listening and watching, if you kind of want to talk about these are some
Mm.
what we call in the hobby big boy cards, or at least I do.
Nah, it was a lot of fun. It was a little bit of it was uh it was an experience because you had to do homework. So luckily, we have apps like Card Ladder, BCP. So the night before, I got up 16 of my Mickey Mantle cards, three of my two Jordan cards, 86 Flair and 96 Finest Gold Refractor. And they were all graded, so it was easy to get comps for those cards. And then an 84, 85 star Stockton card. And then I brought them to the Philly show with a few other cards, and I sold them. And then I got all that money. Went to one dealer for the mantles, 16 different mantle cards from 56 up to 69. So I was able to keep my 51 Bowman to 55 Bowmans and my 53 Topps card. And and the 86 Flair Jordan, like I said, and a few other ones. And I picked up I got enough money to pick up these two cards. Now, these didn't come from the Philly show, but the money did. So the first is a 1914 Cracker Jack Walter Johnson, and it's a PSA 3. It's an old label. It's a new label. It's an old cert, but before I bought it, I measured it and I got out the loop, and it looked like I was
Yeah.
Tim from Tool Time with all the tools around the belt, checking
Well,
the cards out and
that's
everything.
smart. It's smart. It's
Yeah,
being
well,
smart.
I held it up to the light to make sure I could see through it, and this is
Yeah.
something that I never thought I was, ever get the opportunity to. But hate it moving mantle cards. But
I was going to ask you that, Tony. What I know even though he's a Yankee, Mano's an
Hmm.
idol of yours, or somebody you enjoy. Like, how difficult was that to like move that many
Oh,
of them?
pretty much every mantle card tops from 56 to 69. I kept my favorite, so I kept 51 Bowman up to 55 Bowman. I kept the 53
Yeah,
tops, kept the 67 tops, and I kept the 69. I had three 69 tops. One was the regular one, which I sold, but I kept my autographed 69 tops mantle, which is like a PSA 3 with a 10 auto. And
yeah,
I kept my SGC 3 69 mantle with the white letters. So I kept my favorites. So, that meant a lot to me.
yeah,
Um, but, growing up in the 1980s, mantle was the hobby. I mean,
yeah,
you had Mays, you had Banks, you had Williams, who's like a notch below Mantle, but at the very top of the Mount Everest or the Mount Rushmore of the hobby at that time, you had Demarzio and Mantle. And
yeah,
Demarzio always wanted to be first, but
yeah,
Mantle let him go first. But Mantle was everywhere because of the 52 top. So even though I wasn't a Yankees fan growing up, other than Mattingly,
yeah,
you had to respect the Mantle factor everywhere I
yeah,
went. Whether it was buying an issue of baseball cards or a Beckett, Mantle was always there. A lot of articles, and my father telling me stories how great Mays was, and Robin Roberts. But then he says, if I had to pick one person who I saw play live, and I would say the best would be Mays and Aaron right behind them. But if you had to pick the best player I saw coming from my dad in any one year, it would be Mantle. Mantle was just unbelievable. Unfortunately,
yeah,
he just couldn't. He could not sustain the productivity as long as Aaron and Mace. But when Mantle, he was at the top of his game though.
yeah. And then you acquired. I think you showed the Johnson, and then you had
Yeah,
one other card there if you
yeah.
want to.
So I picked up a 1915 Cracker Jack. And I'll say it like Keith Oberman does, Hannes Wagner. And here
Yeah,
you
look at
go
that.
with this card. And when you shine these up to the light, and I have a YouTube video that I recorded for my channel where I hold them up to lights, and on my Instagram channel, you can see the difference,
Yeah,
what these look like. And I never thought I would own a Wagner card. And
yeah,
when this presented the opportunity, and by selling the mantle and the other cards and a few other cards, like a few
yeah,
Joe Wood cards, I had to sell a Clemente autograph. Luckily, I have another one left. I it was just it was a not an impulsive buy. It was an unexpected buy because I was
yeah,
online. A buddy of mine told me he found one on eBay that day, and he told me how much he paid and what grade. I'm like, that's a pretty good deal. Then I went online and I found one. And of
yeah,
all the places where I thought I would never buy a card from, I bought this from. Because
yeah,
that company's usually, thought of to have the highest prices within the hobby.
yeah,
But not for this Wagner card, though.
yeah. You never know. You never know. That's why you always gotta shop around. Even with my Jackie. I mean, I when I knew I was in the market to finally like go ahead and just purchase one, I was really deliberate, Tony, and where I bought it, what price I wanted to be at, and that sort of thing. So it makes all the
Hmm.
sense. Incredible, and like you said, you still got all those mantles that are near and dear to your heart
Hmm.
as well. We didn't really touch on it much, but I want to talk about something that probably some people don't know a lot about. Even I don't know. I know some about, not probably as much as you, and that's the proofs of the '77. Uh, the Topps Reggies, and so talk about these and like I know some things, but not all things, and then there's going to be some people listening that have no idea, and you're going to kind of break this card in a sense
Hmm.
to them.
So in 1977, sorry, at the end of 1976 was the first year baseball had 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 free agency, and with that you had a lot of players, you had moving teams, and
Yeah,
Reggie Jackson was the biggest name then. So starting in December 9th is the date I know of. I don't know of any earlier, excuse me. So December 9th, 1976, Top started creating proofs to test different colors,
yeah,
red, yellow, and blue. And and they wanted to test how the colors would be. So they picked out images, they printed these sheets, and they would put all the yellow through first, all the cyan then, and all the magenta. And if they looked good, then they would start to combine colors. And and what I'm showing now on the screen, so for those that are listening, I'm just showing what the Reggie proofs look
look
like in
like.
terms of the colors. So once Topps got, and it's called a progressive proof because you're going through
Yeah,
the progression of all the different ink colors. So also I'm thinking about this, and Topps didn't have a picture of Reggie at that time wearing his Yankees uh, uniform, so they had to use a Baltimore Orioles one. So they used a Baltimore Orioles picture of Reggie visiting Oakland. So he was wearing the Orioles uniform, but at the Coliseum. And here's a picture of a 1984 issue of baseball cards, which is how I first learned about this card.
yeah,
So I got a somehow I got a hold of this magazine in 1986, even though it came out in '84. So it was a card that people knew existed, but we never saw it before. So early last year, I'm on eBay and I saw that someone actually has a Reggie card for sale. It was in a fall uh, 2019 auction at REA, and REA had all nine colors, and the four color proof, which is the one you see on this magazine, sold for
yeah.
$60,000 or something.
Wow.
But and the black and white one sold, but the other ones didn't sell. It didn't hit the reserve. So I saw this one on eBay right now, and what I'm holding up to my screen is the 1977 Reggie Jackson proof of which was the three colors: blue,
Yeah,
red, and blue, pink, and
yellow.
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 Thank you. And
Yeah,
so I picked it up, and it's a blank back, and I
yeah,
was able to trace the history of this card. So it was purchased from in sheet form at the 1989 Topps Guernseys auction, which is now, it's a piece of hobby history.
yeah,
It's a famous auction, and one collector, Steve Rotman, picked up nine sheets, and he got all nine of these sheets, including the one that sold, and he held on to them up until 2019. And then SGC had a program where they would oversee cutting the sheets for you, and they didn't
yeah.
cut the sheets themselves, but they would get someone to cut it, and then they would grade it, and that's how this card came to be
Yeah,
graded.
9.5.
And
Yeah,
yeah, and it's in my collection. And doing further research on the card, I found out that the first known copy of a four color 77 Reggie proof was at the 1983 National. And then first time it was anyone ever saw one outside of Topps. And then in 1984, it got in that baseball card magazine. And then Mr. Mint must have got a hold of that card because through an Sports Collectors Digest ad, he had the first public sale in 1986. Then you
yeah,
had the auction in '89, and one of the sheets, uncut sheets with the four colors from 1989, was sold in a 1994 auction. REA and Bob Lemke, along with Sports Collectors Digest, bought that sheet, and that's how we came out with this issue from March 25th, 1994. I'm holding up the issue on my screen right now, and they went into the card and they went in a little bit more details, a little bit history about it, about the card. And so it's a hobby important card. The only negative about the card is, of the three color proofs, there's less than two of them that exist. I only know one right now, but always double it. Of the four color proofs, Keith Oberman owns about four or five of them, including most of them are uncut sheets, and then he has a cut sheet. And then someone got one graded by CGC recently, and that's up on eBay for some insane amount, and that's the four color proof also. But even though Sports Collectors Digest and Bob Lemke wrote these articles about it in their magazines, and then they actually bought an uncut sheet, they never put it into the standard catalog. So the standard baseball
Yeah,
card catalog does not have this card listed. It's not in the Beckett database. So it's not because it's not in those two sources, it was never put in the TCDB database. It's not in the PSA database. So if anything happens to this card, and if SGC doesn't want to grade it now, since they're owned by collectors, I'm going to have a problem because PSA will not recognize it because no one entered it in their database. But they
yeah,
have other proofs, such as the 67 Roger Maris with the Yankees team instead of the Cardinals team. That's in there
yeah,
because there's like 60 of them exist. And those were all sheet cut, scissor cut, and they had blank
yeah.
backs too. So a little bit frustrating, but it's part of the hobby. So I just wish that I hope that the hobby does get a standard catalog of some
And
sort.
things
And I,
can, and you know this, Tony. Things can change. What someone
Mhm.
says today, people can tomorrow, change the ruling or how they view something. And however you slice it, right? An important part of hobby history,
Yeah,
a rare part of hobby history, and very cool. And as someone who appreciates Reggie, right, owning that, I'm sure is a big thrill, regardless of what. So whoever says what or what someone recognizes, you know the significance of it. Other people in the hobby, certain other people in the hobby, know the significance of it and how few there are to begin with. So
guess who else knows about the
sometimes,
card?
what's
Sorry,
that?
I was going to say, guess who else knows about this card? So I'm holding up a
Reg,
picture of Reggie
yeah, yeah,
Jackson and my son,
Reggie himself.
and Reggie's holding the card, and and I'm holding up the Scion version of the card. And when I got this picture taken at the Cleveland National, Reggie looked at the card and he gave it a double take because he recognized it, and then he just gave me a little smirk.
Yeah, that's
So he's
funny.
aware of it, and Reggie was obviously involved in the hobby. In the late
Yeah,
1980s, when he hit the 500 home runs, and he's part of the club. He started buying up rookie cards, and he was going to autograph each one of them up to the number of home runs that he hit. And then he
yeah.
had a house fire, and he restarted it. Then he had another house fire,
And what
unfortunately,
Randy
and then he went
first
to Upper Deck.
the first autograph chase was
Hmm.
that Reggie
Yeah,
uh,
the 90
card as
Upper Deck.
well. Yep, and we know the one that was numbered to 714. He wrote, home runs 714. Some other ones he inscribed Mr. October. So
Hmm.
there's a story in the story there. And like you said, if Reggie on the field and even off the field, an important part
Hmm.
of the hobby. And growing up in New York City, Thurman Munson was my guy, but I was a young Yankee fan before Steinbrenner kind of ruined that for me. Um, Reggie could have ran for mayor and won without any political. That's how beloved he was in New York City. So,
Hmm.
that you don't get the nickname Mr. October by accident. So, just World Series historics and heroics,
Hmm.
and you have an important part of hobby history as well. Very cool. Well, we're coming down the wire here. You mentioned your YouTube. I always give the guest kind of the last say. Give out where people can check out your YouTube channel. They'll see that the Reggie stuff and amongst other things in your collection. Any social media you want to share, take your time there, Tony, with
Sure.
all that stuff.
So I do have a YouTube channel. It's TJ underscore is underscore online. So TJ as in Tony Joseph underscore is online. And I'm also on Instagram. That's where a lot of my posts are. And Instagram, it's just search for TJ space is space online. And that's where I could be reached at.
Well, awesome, and there's stuff we didn't even get to. We'll have to have you back on and touch on that as well. But uh, glad to call you my friend. Glad to finally have you on, and maybe see you here in a few months. I better. If I'm going, I better get going and get something done here. But regardless of in any case, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It's quite the honor.
No, no. Listen, hey, we're just two guys enjoying the hobby, so the feeling is likewise. Thanks,
Yeah, but
Tony.
this is the same chair that Dr. Beckett sat in. So,
There you go. All
yeah,
right. Thanks, Tony.
thank you for having me.